Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is Why Your Listening is Weak. And I have to say, looking at the absolute mountain of notes we have here, I am incredibly excited to get into this deep dive.
Oh yeah, it is great to be here. And honestly, this might be the most critical topic we have ever tackled on the show. Because, let us be real, this is the universal struggle for anyone learning the language.
It really is. I mean, we have all been there, right? You spend years in a classroom. You are memorizing those endless vocabulary lists until your eyes bleed.
Oh, the lists, just pages and pages of them.
Yeah, and you nail the grammar test, you can conjugate verbs in your sleep, and then you feel confident. So you finally sit down to watch an English movie without the subtitles, and it is just noise.
It is a complete wall of sound, absolute chaos to your ears.
You feel so lost. Or, and I think this is even worse, you are in a real conversation with a native speaker. Maybe it is a colleague at work or a friend of a friend at a party.
Right, and they're just talking away, telling some long story.
And you find yourself just, nodding your head, smiling.
Yeah.
Maybe throwing in a generic yeah or uh-huh at completely random intervals. But inside you are absolutely panicking because you did not catch a single word of what they just said.
Yes, the classic smile and nod. It is a total survival mechanism. We do it because we want to avoid the sheer embarrassment of stopping the conversation every 3 seconds to say, wait, what did you mean?
Totally.
But the thing is, it is also incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
You are physically standing there in the circle, but mentally, you are stranded on an island. You are not participating at all. You are just enduring the interaction.
Enduring it. Wow. That is such a heavy but true way to describe that feeling. And then there is that other phenomenon. I like to call it the brain switch off.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. You decide you were going to be a good student today. You put on an English audio track, and for the first, let's say 2 minutes, you are hyper-focused. You are right there with them.
But by minute 5.
By minute 5, you are suddenly thinking about what to make for dinner, or wondering if you left the oven on. Your brain just completely checks out of the language.
That is actually a very documented, specific cognitive response to data overload, which we're going to unpack later. But I think, the first thing we really need to do today is just validate that feeling for the listener.
For sure. If you are listening to this right now and nodding your head, you are absolutely not alone in this.
Millions of learners hit this exact same wall. It is arguably the most common, most deeply frustrating part of the language journey.
So why is it the wall? Why is listening the one skill that seems to trip everybody up so much more than reading or writing?
Well, if we look back at the way traditional education operates, listening is, quite frankly, the most ignored skill. Think back to your own school days. What did you actually spend your time doing in English class?
Mostly reading passages from a textbook, filling in the blanks, doing those multiple choice grammar quizzes.
Spot on. It was all highly visual. It was completely analytical. But how much time did the teacher actually dedicate to training your ears to process raw, real-time sound?
Probably close to 0.
Exactly 0 for most people. I really like using the gym analogy here. Imagine going to the gym for 5 solid years. You show up every single day, you work incredibly hard, but you only ever do bicep curls.
Okay, I am picturing this. You would have these massive Arnold Schwarzenegger level arms.
Huge arms. But you have never once done a squat. You have never run on a treadmill. So your legs are just these tiny little sticks. You are a completely unbalanced athlete.
That makes so much sense. I look great in a t-shirt, but if I try to walk up a flight of stairs, I collapse.
That is 100% what happens when you learn English without prioritizing the listening practice. You have built up these incredibly strong grammar eyes, but you have these totally weak listening ears. You are not bad at languages. You are just physically unbalanced in your training regimen.
That is such a vivid image, and I think it is an important distinction to make. When we say weak listening today, we are not saying the learner is not smart.
Not at all. And we really need to emphasize this. Weak does not mean stupid. It does not mean you lack some special language aptitude.
Right.
It simply means there is a gap, a purely mechanical gap between what your ears hear and what your brain understands. Your brain has spent years being trained to process written text, symbols on a page.
Yeah.
It has just never been trained to process invisible sound waves happening in real time.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to close that gap once and for all. We are going to unpack the 12 specific reasons why this failure happens.
We are going to cover everything from the way textbooks literally lie to your ears, all the way to the deep psychology of anxiety.
And we are not just going to leave you with the problems. We are going to give you highly actionable fixes to solve it. We are going to fix the hardware and the software of your English brain.
Let us dive right into part 1 then. I call this section the disconnect.
And honestly, this first point really blew my mind when we were prepping for this. It feels almost like a betrayal by the whole school system. Reason number 1, you learned with your eyes, not your ears.
It is a bit of a betrayal, to be honest. It is what I call the visual trap. The absolute primary cause of listening failure is that you have stored English words in your brain as static images, not as dynamic sounds.
Can you give the listener a concrete example of how that actually plays out in real life?
Absolutely. Take the word comfortable. Picture that word in your head right now. If you learn this from a standard book, your brain breaks it down visually, based purely on the spelling. C-O-M-F-O-R-T-A-B-L-E.
So you look at that and you think, okay, comfortable, 4 very distinct syllables.
Right. You clearly see that O and the R and the A in the middle.
Comfortable, that is how it is spelled on the page.
But that is absolutely not how it is spoken in the real world. A native speaker does not say comfortable. We say comfortable.
Comfortable.
It is barely even 3 syllables. That middle O and the R basically vanish into thin air. The A just becomes this lazy grunt sound. So as a learner, you have this incredibly specific file in your brain labeled comfortable, but when your ear hears comfortable out on the street,
your brain frantically searches its database and just comes back with file not found.
that is it. That is the exact moment the disconnect happens. That split second of file not found is where all the confusion starts. Or, let us look at days of the week. Take Wednesday, W-E-D-N-E-S-D-A-Y. Visually, that is undeniably Wednesday.
Wednesday looks so obvious.
What's spoken? It is Wednesday. It is completely different from the text. That D is completely gone. The first E is gone. If you memorize the spelling of a word before you ever actually hear the sound of it, you're just setting yourself up for massive failure later on.
Because you are basically building a mental map of a city that does not actually exist. You're looking for streets that are not there.
That is a brilliant way to put it. So what is the fix here?
Yeah, do we just throw away our books and stop reading altogether?
No, reading is still vital. But you have to completely change your personal order of operations. You absolutely must hear a word before you try to memorize its spelling.
Or at the very least, do both at the exact same time.
Yes. If you encounter a brand new word in a text, do not just blindly copy it down into your notebook. Put it into a dictionary app on your phone, play the audio clip out loud, and say, oh, so that is how it actually sounds.
You have to train the ear first and the eye second. Bind the meaning to the audio, not just the text.
Spot on. And that leads us perfectly into reason number 2, which is another huge trap I think literally every learner falls into at some point. The every single word trap.
Oh, this is the perfectionist's curse. And it is absolutely deadly for your comprehension.
It really is. It is that sudden spike of panic that sets in when you miss just one single word.
Yes. You are listening to a sentence, maybe it is a podcast, everything is going great, and then boom, they say a word you do not recognize, and your brain just freezes in place.
It triggers a complete chain reaction of failure. Let us paint a picture. Say you are listening to a fast-paced news report. The anchor says the government has announced a comprehensive plan to address the housing crisis. Now, let us say you do not happen to know the word comprehensive.
Okay, so I hear the government has announced a something plan.
And your brain just hits a brick wall. It forcefully grabs onto that unknown word, comprehensive, and starts wrestling with it. What was that? Was it comp? Compre? What could that possibly mean? Is it a bad thing?
Meanwhile, the news anchor has not stopped talking. They were already 3 sentences ahead talking about tax budgets and city planning.
Exactly. But you are still stuck way back at the starting line, fighting to the death with one single adjective.
And because you let yourself get stuck back there, you missed the entire rest of the story. You missed all the surrounding context that probably would have helped you guess what comprehensive meant in the first place.
You nailed it. You sacrificed the entire war just to try and win one tiny, totally irrelevant battle. You completely missed the forest because you were staring at one specific piece of bark on one specific tree.
So how do we actually break that habit? Because, it feels so automatic. It feels like our brains are hardwired to demand 100% understanding.
You really have to force a shift in your focus to the big picture. I love using the painting analogy for this concept. When you go to a museum and look at a beautiful piece of art, like a massive Monet painting, do you walk up, press your nose directly against the canvas, and inspect every single individual brushstroke?
No, of course not. If you did that, you would completely miss the image. It would just look like random, chaotic blobs of paint. You have to stand back.
You stand back.
Yeah.
You do not need to see every individual stroke of paint to clearly see that it is a painting of a sunset over a lake. Listening to a language is the exact same thing. If you miss a word, you have to train yourself to let it go immediately.
Just drop it.
Drop it. Ask yourself in the moment, what is the main idea here? You can usually figure out that the news anchor is talking about a big, detailed government plan without ever knowing the exact dictionary definition of comprehensive.
That is honestly so liberating to hear. Just let it go. It sounds almost like a meditative practice.
It kind of is. It is all about trust. You have to start trusting your brain to naturally fill in the blanks using context. Your brain is a lot smarter than you give it credit for.
However, and there is a big but, coming here, sometimes you really cannot just guess your way through it. Which brings us to reason number 3, the vocabulary barrier. Because sometimes, let's face it, you simply just do not know enough words.
Right. We have to be brutally realistic here. There is some very hard math involved in language comprehension. Studies and research suggest that you actually need to know about 95 to 98% of the words in any given sentence to understand it comfortably without needing to stop.
Wait, 98%? That is incredibly high. That means in a standard 50-word paragraph, you can only afford to miss maybe one single word.
It is a very high bar. If your knowledge drops below that, say down to 80% listening, suddenly becomes this exhausting, high-stakes puzzle. You are spending so much of your cognitive energy just trying to decode the individual sounds that you completely lose the overall meaning. Let me give you a test sentence. The protagonist's soliloquy was a poignant reflection.
Ooh, okay. Protagonist, soliloquy, poignant. That is rough.
Right. If you do not already know that protagonist means the main character, and soliloquy means a speech given by someone alone on stage, and poignant means deeply emotionally touching,
then no amount of clever listening strategy or context guessing is going to save me there.
Exactly. You simply do not have the raw data required to process the input.
Or what about slang? Slang is an absolute killer for learners.
Oh, absolutely brutal. If a British person walks up to you and says, mate, I was absolute gobsmacked, and you do not know that gobsmacked is slang for being extremely shocked or surprised, you are completely stuck.
Even if your ears are perfect.
Even if you hear the phonetic sounds perfectly, gob, smacked. The meaning is locked behind a heavy door, and you just do not own the key.
So the fix here is fairly simple in theory, but it requires actual work. You have to sit down and build the vocabulary.
You do. There is no shortcut around learning words. But, and this directly connects back to our first point, you must build that vocabulary auditorily. Do not just read silent lists of words.
Use apps where a native speaker says the word out loud. Watch videos.
Yes, if you learn a brand new word today, make absolute certain that you know what it sounds like, not just what it looks like written down. You need to be building an audio database in your head.
Okay, let us transition into part 2. This is where things get highly technical, and frankly, I think this is fascinating. The mechanics of spoken English, or as I like to call it, why native speakers sound like somebody put them on fast forward.
This section is usually the biggest aha moment for the students I work with. We really have to talk about reason number 4, connected speech.
I feel like almost nobody ever teaches this in a traditional school setting. They teach us to speak like rigid little robots.
I'm going to
The store?
spot on. But native speakers, in any language really, are not robots. We are incredibly efficient. Our mouths want to get the thought out into the air as smoothly and quickly as humanly possible. So we naturally blend words together. We connect them. We mutate them.
Let us break down the specific ways we actually do this, because there are rules to the madness. First up is linking.
Linking happens when one word ends with a consonant sound, and the very next word begins with a vowel sound. We do not stop the airflow between them.
Yeah.
We just violently push that consonant right onto the front of the next word. It acts like a slide.
Give the listener a clear example of that.
Okay, take the phrase, turn it off. 3 distinct words. But if I say it naturally in a sentence, I say, turn it off.
Turn out off. Wow, it really just sounds like one long, weird word.
Or take, pick it up. We would never say pick it up. We fluidly say, pike it up.
Puckied up. It honestly sounds like we are speaking a completely made-up language when you isolate it like that.
It really does. And if your learner brain is sitting there actively waiting, to hear the clear, separate sounds of picking it on it up, it will completely miss picking it up as it flies by. You were waiting for 3 distinct, neat little bricks, but we just threw a wet bucket of cement at your head.
That is a great analogy. Okay, then there's reduction. This is where we just get kind of lazy, right?
Well, I prefer to call it highly efficient. We massively shorten common grammatical filler words because they simply are not the most important part of the message. Yeah. So going to instantly becomes, you'll go.
I'm gonna,
becomes,
let me go.
Exactly. Huh? Then we have elision. This is where entire sounds just completely disappear into the void. Take the phrase last night. That T at the end of last night often vanishes entirely in rapid speech. We just say last night.
Last night. Yeah, I am saying it to myself right now, and I definitely do not pronounce that T.
And then we get to assimilation. This is arguably the wildest one of all. This is where sounds physically change their nature to match their neighbors. Think about the phrase, did you? When we say that quickly, the D and the Y literally crash into each other and mutate into a J sound. Did you? Did you? Did you go to the store yesterday?
Yes. So if a student is intensely listening for a crisp, clear did you, they will literally never hear it in the real world. They have to retrain their ears to instantly recognize did you.
It is amazing because once you actually know these rules, you cannot unhear them. They are everywhere. It is like finally unlocking the matrix code.
It is. Suddenly, that fast, intimidating blur of sound starts to naturally separate itself into recognizable chunks. You realize we are not actually speaking faster than normal, we are just speaking connectedly.
But then, just when you think you have finally cracked the English code, you decide to travel to a different city. Which brings us to reason number 5, the accent challenge. Ah, yes, the Hollywood bias. Most global learners are raised on a heavy, steady diet of American movies, American pop music, and American TV shows. So their ears become highly calibrated to understanding standard general American English.
Which is fantastic, right up until you meet someone from Liverpool or Glasgow or Sydney, Australia.
Or even just a standard Londoner. Let us look at a super basic word like water.
Okay, the American way, water. It is a very soft sound in the middle. It almost turns into a D.
Right, but the British way, water. There is no R at the end at all, and that middle T is incredibly sharp. It aggressively hits the roof of the mouth.
Wuta.
They're taking Australian, wota. It uses a completely different vowel spread and sentence intonation, or standard Indian English. Water.
So if your brain is only ever trained to recognize water, then hearing wota from a barista in London might as well be a word from Mars.
And this issue goes way beyond just pronunciation into actual regional phrasing. If you go to Ireland, you might easily hear someone say, I'm after going to the shop.
I'm after going? What does that even mean?
It simply means, I just went to the shop. But if you try to translate that literally in your head, you're going to be so confused. Or think about Scottish phrasing. The entire rhythm, the bouncing melody of the speech is fundamentally different.
So what is the fix here? How do we prepare for all of that?
Deliberate, intentional exposure. You have to aggressively force yourself out of your acoustic comfort zone. If you only watch American sitcoms, force yourself to watch a fast-paced British drama like Sherlock.
Which, by the way, Benedict Cumberbatch speaks incredibly fast in that show.
Very fast. Watch Australian YouTubers. Listen to news podcasts from India or Nigeria. You need to intentionally calibrate your ears to the entire global spectrum of how English is actually used. You have to cross-train your ears, just like an athlete cross-trains their muscles.
Muscle confusion for your brain, I love it. Now, speaking of training the ears, we absolutely have to talk about reason number 11 from our list. The weak phonetic foundation. This is when your own native language is actively fighting against you.
This is almost a biological issue in a way. If a specific phonetic sound does not exist in your native language's alphabet, your brain often simply refuses to process it. It acts like a firewall. It filters the sound out, or it forces that sound to map onto the closest available option in your native library.
I think the most classic global example of this is the TH sound.
Absolutely. The unvoiced TH is actually quite rare globally. So millions of learners hear a word like think, and their brain registers it as tink or sink.
Yeah, you hear, I think so all the time.
Right. And while that might seem like a totally minor, harmless pronunciation quirk, it creates a massive listening delay. Your brain has to pause mid-conversation and ask itself, wait, did he just say sink, like a kitchen sink, or think like a thought?
And that tiny delay, that microsecond of hesitation, completely kills your listening fluency.
It does. And then we have the danger of minimal pairs. These are incredibly risky for learners.
Give us some examples of those.
The classic is ship versus sheep.
Or fit versus feet.
Right. If you genuinely cannot hear the subtle acoustic difference between that short I sound and that long E sound, you're going to be in serious trouble out in the real world.
Yeah.
Just imagine walking up to the boat captain and politely asking, "Do you have any sheep?" when you actually meant to say ship.
Utter confusion ensues.
Complete confusion. So the permanent fix here is to actually sit down and study the IPA.
The International Phonetic Alphabet.
Yes. I know it looks scary. It looks like some ancient secret code, but it is really just a practical map of human sounds.
Right.
It literally shows you exactly where to physically place your tongue and your lips. And you have to sit and drill those minimal pairs until your ear can instantly hear the distinct difference.
Okay, we have thoroughly covered the physical mechanics. Now I want to shift gears to what I think is easily the most relatable part of this entire deep dive. Part 3, psychology and habits. The internal blocks.
Oh, this is the good stuff. This is where we stop blaming our poor ears and start looking deeply at the brain and our own emotions.
Reason number 6 is a massive one, the translation lag.
I call this the fatal error of language learning. Most struggling learners operate exactly like this. They hear an English sentence, they pause, they actively translate that sentence into their native language in their head. They formulate the meaning, they think of a response in their native language, and then they awkwardly translate that response back into English to speak.
Just hearing you describe that entire process sounds utterly exhausting.
It is incredibly exhausting.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it is devastatingly slow. That entire mental gymnastics routine takes the average learner about 5 to 6 seconds to complete.
And in a natural, flowing conversation, 6 seconds is an absolute eternity.
Exactly. Imagine someone at a party says to you, "Wow, I had a blast tonight." If you stop the tape to translate the word blast.
You might initially think, wait, an explosion? Did something blow up?
Right. And by the time you finally realize, oh, blast is slang for having fun, the speaker has already moved on. They're currently talking about the loud music, the terrible food, and who else was at the party. You have missed all of it because you were mentally buffering. You were basically trying to run modern software on a computer from 1995.
So the fix is to just stop translating. And I know people absolutely hate hearing that advice because it sounds literally impossible. Just think in English. How do you even do that?
It is daunting, but you have to start incredibly small.
Start with objects, right?
Yes, exactly. Start with the physical objects around you. Look at a tree outside. Do not think the word for tree in your native language. Just look at it and force your inner voice to say, tree. Look at your coffee cup. Start narrating your basic life. I am walking. I am tired. I am opening the door.
I love that. Bypassing the translation step for the simplest things.
Right. By doing that, you actively train your neural pathways to go direct. Concept straight to English. No native language middleman slowing the process down.
You do not need to sit there debating high-level philosophy in your head. Just start by naming the living room furniture.
100%. Keep it simple until the pathway is strong.
Now, let us talk about the feelings. The raw anxiety of listening.
The famous fight or flight response. When you are in a high-stress listening situation, when your internal monologue is screaming, "Oh no, they're talking too fast, I'm not going to understand this," your body literally responds by releasing cortisol, heavy stress hormones.
And what does that chemical rush actually do to the brain?
It physically reduces your working memory. It shuts down the highly evolved parts of the brain that are responsible for creatively processing language so it can focus on basic survival. So simply by being deeply afraid that you will not understand, you are physically making yourself less capable of understanding.
Wow. It is a literal self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really is. And it is deeply tied to this toxic perfectionism we see in learners. They hold on to this totally false belief that native speakers hear and understand 100% of everything perfectly all the time.
Which we definitely do not.
We absolutely do not. Think about it. How often do you say to someone, "What?" or "Huh?" Or, sorry, could you say that again?
Honestly. All the time, especially if we are in a loud restaurant, or I'm just a bit tired, or the person is a mumbler.
Right. But here is the critical difference. When a language learner misses a word, they immediately internalize it and think, "Oh, my English is so bad, I am failing." When a native speaker misses a word, they just think, "Oh, I guess I just did not hear that clearly over the noise." We need learners to passionately adopt that native mindset. It is completely okay to not catch every single syllable.
And that brilliant point brings us right to reason number 12, giving up too early, the patience factor.
This one is honestly the saddest reason on our list, because it stops so much incredible potential success dead in its tracks. Listening is a fundamentally slow growth skill. It is not like memorizing a grammar rule where you study it on Tuesday and you perfectly know it on Wednesday.
It is much more organic than that.
It's like growing a complex plant from a seed.
You have a really great story about this that you share with your students, the Maria versus Carlos scenario.
Yes, I love using this scenario. Imagine two students, Maria and Carlos. They both start their language journey at the exact same intermediate level. They both sit down to listen to an English podcast, and they both only understand about 30% of what is being said.
Okay, so it is a struggle for both of them.
Right. Now, Maria feels utterly defeated by that 30%. She says to herself, this is way too hard. I'm clearly not ready for real audio yet. So she quits listening entirely and retreats back to her quiet, safe grammar workbooks.
Okay, that is classic Maria behavior. Very safe.
Meanwhile, Carlos also only understands 30%. It's highly uncomfortable for him. It is annoying. It gives him a headache. But he accepts it. He says, okay, well, 30% is slightly better than 0%.
Yeah.
And he just keeps listening every single day. A month goes by and maybe he is only up to 35%.
Slow progress, but it is progress.
Exactly. 3 months later, he hits 50%. A full year later, Carlos is casually understanding 85% of the podcast. Maria is still stuck at 30%. The only real difference between them was not natural talent. It was their personal tolerance for ambiguity. Carlos was totally willing to sit there and be confused for a long time.
Tolerance for ambiguity. That is such an incredibly powerful phrase. You really have to be okay with being a little bit lost in the woods for a while.
You absolutely have to get comfortable with being profoundly uncomfortable. It is the only way through.
Okay, let's confidently move into part 4 of this deep dive, strategy. We know the exact problems now. So what are the tools? And more importantly, are we all using those tools completely wrong? Reason number 8 says, yes, we are. Choosing the wrong materials.
This is what I refer to as the Goldilocks problem.
Yeah.
Most people choose listening materials that are either way too hot or way too cold.
With too hot being trying to watch Game of Thrones on day 1.
Oh, Game of Thrones is basically the final boss of English listening. It is the absolute nemesis of beginners. Just think about it for a second. It is filled with archaic, medieval, completely made-up fantasy vocabulary.
Tons of complex, whispering political plots in dark, echoey castles.
Yes. And it features incredibly heavy British and obscure regional accents.
It is a total nightmare if you are not ready for it.
It simply leads to deep despair. A beginner watches 10 minutes of that and genuinely thinks, I am never, ever going to learn this impossible language.
And on the flip side, too cold is watching those simplistic, this is a red cat videos for 5 years straight.
Right. If you easily understand 100% of the audio you are hearing, you are no longer learning. You are simply reviewing. And staying in that safe review zone forever leads to total stagnation.
So what exactly is the just right middle ground?
In linguistics, we call it the I+1 concept. The I represents your current comfortable level of understanding. The +1 means the material is just one small step above that current level. You generally want to aim for material where you naturally understand maybe 70 to 80% of it.
So you can generally follow the narrative, right?
Yes, you follow the story, you grasp the main context, but there is still a healthy 20% of unknown words and weird structures that forces your brain to stretch and pulls you up to that next level of fluency.
So if a listener is at an intermediate level right now, maybe a classic sitcom like Friends or The Office.
Sitcoms are absolute gold for learners, because the deep visual context really helps you decode the spoken language. If you clearly see the character Joey holding up a steaming mug of coffee, your brain instantly knows they are talking about coffee, even if you miss the exact sentence. Now, if you are highly advanced, that is when you move to dense audio podcasts, fast political debates, things with absolutely zero visual aids to rescue you.
That makes total sense. Now, speaking of relying on visual aids, we have to tackle reason number 9, the subtitle trap. I know this one is going to be highly controversial. People absolutely love clutching onto their subtitles.
I know. I am probably going to be the bad guy here for a minute. But having subtitles on the screen in your own native language is pure poison for your listening practice.
Poison. Wow, that is a very strong word.
It is strong, but it is scientifically true. If you have those native language subtitles running at the bottom of the screen, your brain, which is biologically designed to be as lazy and efficient as possible, will simply take the easy way out. It will just read the text. It will entirely shut off your complex auditory processing centers. You might truly feel like you're doing great listening practice, but the reality is you're just rapidly reading a novel at the bottom of your television.
So what is the prescription? Go cold turkey. Just completely rip the subtitles away forever.
Ideally, yes, eventually. But a structured transition is usually much better for your sanity. I always highly recommend the 3-step method to my students.
Oh, walk us through the 3-step method right now.
Step 1, you take a very short video clip, maybe 3 minutes long. You watch it with English subtitles turned on, not your native language, English. This actively helps your brain connect the physical sounds to the actual English text.
Okay, that sounds very manageable.
Step 2, you immediately watch that exact same 3-minute clip again, but this time with absolutely 0 subtitles. Now your ears are forced to do all the heavy lifting, but because your brain already knows the general context from step 1, the panic level is hugely reduced.
That is smart. And what is step 3?
Step 3 is shadowing. You watch that same clip a third time, and you actually try to speak the dialogue out loud along with the actors.
Wow, doing all 3 steps just for one short clip? That sounds like a serious mental workout.
It is a massive workout, but that focused repetition is exactly how you build real neurological muscle.
Now, reason number 10 fits perfectly in here as well. Missing the cultural context. Because sometimes you can hear every single English word perfectly, but you still completely miss the actual meaning because you just do not know the underlying culture.
It is so true. Language is culture. You simply cannot separate the two. Let us look at a classic example, like heavy sarcasm.
Oh, yeah. Like if someone walks into work soaking wet from the rain and says, "Oh, great, another beautiful Monday."
Exactly. If you process that sentence completely literally, you're going to think this crazy person actually loves rainy Mondays. But the subtle tone of voice, the facial expression, the cultural context of hating Mondays, it completely flips the dictionary meaning of the words. Or look at cultural idioms.
Like telling an actor to go break a leg.
Yes. Imagine you were about to give a huge presentation at work, and a native-speaking colleague walks by, smiles, and says, "Hey, go break a leg up there."
If you translate that literally, you were thinking, why does my coworker want me to get physically injured? Are we enemies?
Precisely. If you have not been immersed enough to know the weird theatrical history that it actually means good luck, you are entirely lost. Or phrases like spill the beans or hit the nail on the head. These are not just random vocabulary words to memorize. They are deeply ingrained cultural codes.
So to fix that, you really just have to deeply immerse yourself in the media to pick these nuances up organically. You cannot just memorize them all from a printed list.
You absolutely have to see them operating out in the wild.
All right, we have finally arrived at part 5 of the deep dive, the action plan. We promised the listeners some highly actionable fixes today. We are going to give you 4 very specific training exercises, plus a daily routine. Let us start with the exercise that everyone hates doing, but absolutely everyone needs. Exercise 1, dictation.
Oh, dictation. I affectionately call this the truth serum. Dictation is incredibly painful to do because it ruthlessly reveals your exact weaknesses instantly. There's nowhere to hide.
So how do we actually do a proper dictation session?
It is simple but intense. You take a very short audio clip, maybe just 30 seconds of a podcast. You listen to exactly one single sentence. You press pause. And you grab a pen and write down exactly what you heard. Every single word.
And then you go back and compare your handwritten notes to the official transcript.
Yes. And you really brutally analyze the gaps. Why did you miss a word? Did you miss it simply because you had never heard it before? Okay, that is a vocabulary problem. Did you confidently write down teacup instead of pickup? That is a clear phonetic problem. Did you miss the tiny ed sound at the end of a past tense verb? That is a combined grammar and listening problem. It beautifully diagnoses your specific personal issues.
It sounds incredibly rigorous, but obviously highly effective. Okay, exercise 2, shadowing. We touched on this earlier.
Shadowing is literally the gym for your mouth and your ears. You play the native audio, and you immediately repeat it out loud, either simultaneously or just a tiny split second behind the speaker. You are aggressively trying to mimic their exact speed, their rising and falling intonation, even their emotional tone.
You are basically acting like their personal echo.
Yes. And the secret here is, do not worry at all if you do not understand every single word while you are doing it. The primary goal of shadowing is absorbing the rhythm and forcing rapid sound processing. If your mouth can physically learn to say it at that rapid speed, your ears will automatically learn to hear it at that speed.
That is a great tip. Okay, exercise 3 is a bit more fun, the pause and predict method.
This one is great. This explicitly trains your brain to anticipate data. Native speakers are constantly subconsciously predicting what the other person is going to say next. It is how we process speech so fast.
So how do we practice that? Just literally stop the audio right in the middle of a sentence.
Right. You're listening to a story, and the speaker says, "I was so hungry I went to the store to buy a fresh loaf of amia." and you hit SOP. What comes next?
Bread. Obviously bread.
Probably bread, maybe milk or cheese. But it is definitely not going to be elephant or car. By forcing yourself to guess, this keeps your brain highly active. You are no longer just sitting there passively receiving sound waves. You are actively constructing the grammatical sentence right along with the speaker.
I love that. And finally, exercise 4, multi-speed listening. I always call this the ankle weights technique.
This is a phenomenal brain hack. You take an English podcast and you actively crank the playback speed up to 1.25x.
So everyone suddenly sounds like hyperactive chipmunks.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But you force yourself to listen to that super fast speed for a solid 5 minutes. Try your absolute best to keep up. Then after 5 minutes, you drop the speed right back down to normal 1.0x.
And what actually happens to your brain when you do that?
It legitimately feels like everyone is suddenly speaking in slow motion. Normal speed suddenly feels incredibly luxurious and easy. You feel like you have all this extra free time in your head to process the incoming words. It is purely a psychological trick on your perception, but it works absolute wonders for building up your listening confidence.
So those are the tools. But how do we realistically fit this into a normal, busy day? Because everyone listening has jobs, families, lives. We need a sustainable routine.
You do not need to lock yourself in a room for 3 hours a day. You just need daily consistency. Here's a very simple, highly effective daily plan.
Give it to us.
Morning time is for passive exposure. Just 15 minutes. Put on an English news podcast or talk radio while you are driving your commute or while you are making your morning coffee. Do not stress about understanding it all. Just let the raw English sounds naturally wash over your brain.
Just getting the rhythm into your head to start the day.
Right. Then, afternoon time is for active training. This is another 15 minutes. Pick just one of the exercises we talked about. Do quick dictation, do 5 minutes of intense shadowing. This is the heavy lifting, the actual hard work.
And the evening?
Evening is for fun immersion. Watch an episode of The Office. Watch a funny YouTube video about a topic you already love, like cooking or travel. Something you genuinely enjoy, but keep it in English.
Wait, so that is it. We are talking about maybe 45 total minutes a day?
That is truly all it takes. If you actually stick to that 45-minute routine every single day, I guarantee you will be a fundamentally different English listener in just 3 months.
I love that so much. It is entirely manageable for anyone. Now, as we move into part 6, let us take a minute to aggressively bust some persistent myths and look at some real success stories before we wrap this up.
Let us do it. I love busting these.
Myth number 1, and I hear this everywhere. I absolutely need to move to an English-speaking country if I ever want to really learn to listen properly.
Completely false. Absolutely false. Look, maybe 20 or 30 years ago that was true, but today we have high-speed internet. You can easily surround yourself with crystal clear English audio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether you live in downtown Tokyo, in Sao Paulo, or in Cairo. Physical geography is simply no longer a valid excuse.
Okay, myth number 2. I am just too old. Adult brains cannot learn languages the way little kids do.
Also entirely false. Adults absolutely learn differently, but they do not learn worse. Adults possess high-level analytical skills. We can consciously spot patterns. We can deploy complex strategies like dictation and shadowing. Kids just act like passive sponges, sure, but it literally takes them 5 solid years just to learn how to speak, basically. A dedicated adult can be highly strategic and make massive life-changing progress in just 1 single year.
And myth number 3, which ties back to the school system, studying more advanced grammar will naturally improve my listening skills.
Categorically, no. Studying grammar deeply helps your reading, and it definitely helps your writing. It does absolutely nothing to help your ear physically process a blur of sound in real time. You simply cannot grammar book your way to listening fluency. If you want to get better at listening, you have to actually listen.
Let us talk about some real people who actually applied this stuff. You brought some great examples.
Yeah, take one of my former students, Yuki. She relied heavily on the shadowing technique. She was completely stuck, totally frustrated, and she could not pass the listening section of her TOEIC exam to save her life. She started actively shadowing English TED Talks for 15 minutes every single day.
Yep.
Within a few months, she went from totally confused to easily passing the exam with a remarkably high score.
Just from consistent shadowing. That is amazing.
Or look at Mohammed. He had a massive problem with the translation lag. He actively broke the habit by narrating his entire daily life out loud. He would walk around his house saying, "I am making my coffee now. I am opening the front door. I am putting on my shoes. He forcefully stopped translating and literally forced his brain to start generating thoughts directly in English.
And Anna, the subtitle addict.
Oh, Anna. She was terrified of losing her subtitles.
Yeah.
But she boldly went cold turkey on native language subtitles. She committed to a brutal 30-day challenge. She told me it was incredibly painful and frustrating for the first week, but her brain eventually adapted to the stress. Now she sits back and watches full Hollywood movies freely without reading a single word on the screen.
I think the most important takeaway here is that these are just regular, everyday people. They did not have some magical language pill. They just consistently did the hard work.
Exactly. They just water the tree every day.
And that beautifully brings us to our final thought for today's deep dive, the bamboo tree analogy.
Yes, this is exactly what I want to leave the listener with today. Improving your English listening skills is remarkably similar to planting a Chinese bamboo tree. You plant the seed, you meticulously water it, you fertilize the soil, and for weeks, even for months, you look at the dirt and you see absolutely nothing happening above the ground. You might easily think to yourself, well, this is a waste of time. This is not working at all.
But something profound is actually happening right now.
Yes. Down in the dark, the roots are growing incredibly deep. They are spreading out wide. The tree is quietly establishing a massive foundation. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, it violently shoots up into the sky. Listening is a process of invisible growth. You might sincerely feel like you are not improving week to week, but I promise you, every single minute of active listening is silently building that complex neurological root system in your brain. Until one random day, you're watching a movie and it just effortlessly clicks.
That is so powerful. I really want everyone listening to this right now to just pause and visualize their future self. Just imagine the future version of you, casually sitting in a loud cafe, naturally laughing at a fast-paced joke in English, or relaxing on the couch watching a movie without constantly glancing down at the subtitles. That fluent, confident version of you is out there waiting.
They really are. You just have to be willing to put in the daily reps to get there.
So as soon as this finishes, go press play on something challenging. Push yourself a little bit and just keep going.
Absolutely. Do not give up on the 30%.
If you found this deep dive helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It really helps us grow and keep bringing you these deep dives every single week.
Happy listening, everyone. Keep watering that tree.
See you next time.